Hello everybody, Pinstripe here. Welcome to the Scout versus Legend gameplay. Tonight we have the full match here on the Mystical Mission 25, and it's been like 3 years since we last did one of these kind of videos. The Versus series is back, that's right, we are cranking out these kinds of videos because the previous ones that we have done 3 years ago, it was Surgeon versus Legend. We've also done Legend versus Legend. We've also covered the Ace and Legend and Commando and all mixing the classes together. But on paper, of course, the Scout and Legend are greatly unequal, shall we say. They are not balanced at all. You have the first starting rank of the Espionage class in the Scout with the single poison, single pickpocket, and a rifle and a hide. Of course, versus AI enemies, this is where you can actually do pretty well, and we'll go through this entire match like I mentioned. We will cut out the boring bits, the slow parts that we don't need to see, because as I'm sure you can kind of guess, we are going to be hiding a lot. But the pillbox I have locked in place. Nice little fact there, you can use the hide to block enemy AI from maneuvering any vehicle that requires rotation, so that is either the pillbox or the artillery. You plonk yourself in a hide next to it, you can stop it from rotating in one specific direction. So Izzy was a little bit screwed. Thankfully, managed to avoid any damage from him, so that was effectively a skip turn. And then of course, you know, the obvious choice here is to start by getting something from the pickpocket. As this is the default Mission 25, we have the ×4 health crates of 50 HP each, which, given that the Scout holds 75 HP by default, the most that we can bolster ourselves up to is 125, which when you compare it to the Legend's 200 HP is not too far off. I mean, 75 HP is not too terrible considering that we are the lowest rank within the Espionage class. I mentioned a minute ago that these two are unequal / unbalanced, and what I mean by that, going into more detail, is just that on paper, when you look at the Legend, they are completely stacked with absolutely everything, including health, and the Scout is going to have to heavily rely on that single pickpocket to get something noteworthy to start dealing damage, or to start maneuvering the Legend that you are targeting in a specific direction. Because you'll notice in this gameplay, my main objective is kind of the standard approach of assigning one pig to each Legend, and so each pig then fights each other in each corner. And obviously the main thing that you want to be doing here in this stipulation is nudging the Legends as close to the water pool as possible, because that is going to be one of your main resources to deal that big damage. I mean, I didn't mention in the Scout's arsenal that you have the knife, because as a melee weapon, that's probably the best you can have on this mission, because when you look at the bayonet or the trotter, it kind of doesn't push them far enough. Meanwhile, the cattle prod does too much, or the sword does too much. So the knife is a good in-between when you want to be slicing Legends into the middle of the water, because that's where things can get a little bit funky, especially on the water pools that are on the outer parts, because if you can get one of the Legends into the middle of that and they do a spin, then you can guarantee yourself at least 50 HP's worth of damage from the water, plus the poison if they aren't already. So in the previous turn, you can see I was getting quite lucky collecting all of the jetpacks from the British Legend, then getting the self-heal, which is massive when you think about that this guy is only on 85 HP, so he did collect the health crate earlier, but then took some damage. So my guys are already tanking hits, and I'm trying to body block as much as possible as well, because that's the obvious stance to take when you're facing up against Legends. If you can body block everybody and guarantee that the Legend that is taking its turn will damage his own teammate, then that is going to do you a massive help in the long run. So yeah, going into this, I was hoping to try and maintain the survival bonus for as long as possible, but I knew that I would eventually have to use some of my pigs as cannon fodder. Thankfully getting a bit lucky with the extra damage onto the American Legend there, as his pathing was a little bit funky. I do try and also get lucky with an infinite bazooka, but sadly it just doesn't pay off in the way that you'd expect it to. Here, have a trotter, enjoy. But we have acquired the pillbox, which means that we can now sink all of these heavy machine gun shots into the German legend because he is the one that is in the center of the map that I can't get to. He's on the high ground. I hold, and technically I do hold jetpacks, but I'm kind of tunnel vision on the British legend at the moment, so I'm not going to be thinking about pushing the German legend off. Instead, like I say, 120 HP's worth of damage incoming from those ×3 heavy machine guns, as long as he can remain on target, which is fine by me, I suppose. I did think briefly about going for him there, but it makes sense for me to prioritize the good old Frenchie in the corner, given that he doesn't have anyone around him, and I still have the single pickpocket to use. Now, the more that I play through these kind of stipulations, the more I realize why the legends have the tranquilizer. Speaking of, collecting that as well, that's kind of nice, but would have been handy to have something a little bit more long-lasting. I can understand why the legends hold a tranquilizer and heavy machine gun, both ×1, compared to having a sniper rifle. On this mission, the legends, it's a map that works really well for this class. And this is where I'm kind of curious to see how the legend would do on any other mission, if it were possible to get them working on there, and just how they could be integrated into the campaign if, hypothetically, they could be added as an enemy type. On this mission, like I say, they work really well because the map plays to their strengths, in that they prioritize those long-range bazookas. Whereas if you play against AI commandos or heroes, take for instance mission 21, either normal mode or hard mode, they will prioritize the sniping of the rifle compared to the bazooka. But of course, I guess with the hero it's a little bit more mixed. But yeah, I don't know. It makes me thankful that they can't deal the easy 40 damage, because if they could, from said sniper rifle, you would be a tad bit screwed. And their accuracy here is top notch. It has to be. It's the final mission. So if you add a sniper rifle into that factor, then they would more than likely be hitting you constantly, even if you're trying to body block. And that is where I'm thankful again that the bazooka comes in, because you can, as I mentioned previously, get the body blocks in, get the self-damage onto the other legends, and basically bait them to hit you whilst hopefully dealing damage onto their own teammates. So already 80 HP going into the German legend, so that's a pretty hefty hit. The American one is down to 88, but the tranquilizers are coming out. We've got no methods of healing, so that is a tad bit painful. But I can tank it because I've still got this scout on 125. Sadly, nothing else to show for it besides a rifle, so body block is going to come out again. 160 down to 125, there's only 35 HP difference between those two pigs, so there's still a chance, but I'm also missing 2 turns in a row, so that does kind of suck. So this is the part of the video where not much really happens. The German legend decides finally, okay, maybe I should use my heavier weapons, but hopefully getting the hit onto Izzy as well, because I prioritized the poison onto him, but somehow the collision there didn't really do much. Now this is, I guess, the point of the video where we have utilized all our resources. We have completely just outdone ourselves so far, considering that no one is dead. Everybody that needs to be poisoned is poisoned, and the single pig that isn't, I'm already planning ahead as to how to deal with him, because if you're able to use those skip turns in conjunction with dealing 20 damage, it sounds so sad, but just 20 damage from the rifle, it is indeed possible. Even as my first pig then falls and I can't get this final shot away onto said German legend, so no 120 going on to him. It will be the split 80 on the German and then 40 as I turn my attention over to the British dude, seeing as he just killed my pig, so I may as well retaliate by getting a hit on him. As that was my final usage of the heavy machine gun, I am all out of useful ammunition. I am curious to know, actually, let me know in the comments, have you ever used the flamethrower that is in the pillbox on this mission? Have you ever found a need for it? Because I have not. The range generally is terrible and the damage is nothing to speak about, so we're going to leave it at that. But this is, as I mentioned, the part of the video where my main idea and thinking of play is in place, i.e. that I'm going to prioritize damage onto the French pig because he isn't poisoned. And as you'll see coming up after my scout dies from a sword, what a valiant way to go. Everything is banking on this upcoming turn of me getting a poison onto the German legend, because he is the final ticket, I guess, to utilizing the oldest strategy in the book, which we'll get to shortly. Not before this legend instantly is like, hey, you want to eat some TNT? And then plants it on the ground and slips off himself, but deals the damage onto my scout, who thankfully is alive. But yeah, this is the shot. This is where it all comes down to the big monies in getting the hit onto the German legend. I have, as I mentioned, the single poison gas left, so it all requires nice, calm, casual aim. I do go low, full power, and it drops directly onto his face, so it works out quite nicely. So that is the last piece of the puzzle, I guess, connected in place. So if any of my other pigs die, it's fine, because at least I still have one left. And I'm sure you can guess what my plan is here, but taking the machine gun to the face, not dead yet, but took a hefty hit there. And of course, I'm still getting the rifle shots in onto Le Renard. The lower I can get his health, the easier the later game will technically be. And speaking of easy, Izzy takes the 10 HP damage, hits me with the pillbox, and instantly skips his turn. The AI will do that if they connect with you. Same with the artillery again. But here he is, the star hog that is Ninja. After this single turn, he will become the star of the entire show on 9 HP. And I figured I need to get one more hit onto Yakovsky, bring him down to the low 100s as the British legend finally drops to 5 HP. So I have a skip turn on the cards. And it does play quite nicely here in that, yeah, okay, my pigs are kind of falling like flies, but at least he used his tranquilizer as a final goodbye, and I dropped the crate, which is really not helpful. No point in collecting that because it is the trotter, and it just gets worse. Oh dear. Yeah, and it gets even worse because, oh dear, Le Renard is tired of all of this nonsense. He wants to eliminate my most healthiest scout at this point. And as you can expect, this is going to absolutely decimate me, but I actually needed that extra damage onto Le Renard in order to successfully complete this mission, because without that damage, I would have been completely screwed, if I'm honest. Yeah, bringing his health down to what it is now, I think he's on the low 70s. That really bodes well for me, and seeing as this is my final pig, it is now a 1v6 situation. You know what I gotta do. You know that I need to get to the French pig and use him as my main damage sponge to inflict as much rifle damage into him as possible and use that hide. So, as you'd expect, we are using, as I mentioned, the oldest trick in the book of poisoning all enemies and utilizing those skip turns in order to then inflict damage onto the single target that is remaining. This is the same tactic that I used as a kid, as many viewers, as I'm sure that are watching right now, have used before, in that you poison and hide like a coward. When you have no further resources and when all you need to do is hide, we are going to speed this up as well just to avoid all the boring skips, but just so that you can see the entirety of this gameplay, that you can see that I was using that exact strategy. Now I know that the green guy is going next, so he's going to skip so I can damage the French dude and then continue to hide. And it's going to be a rinse and repeat situation of every other pig that is dropped down to below 10 HP or less. Then I will use that turn beforehand to shoot Le Renard, bring his health down ever so slowly. As you can see here, I have another opportunity as it is going to be Izzy's turn. Don't forget, if you are forgetting the turn order on the final mission, the turns that are taken by the legends are dictated by the same list as when you choose a team at the very start of the campaign. The order that is shown there is the same order that is used by the legends. Shout out to Bobby as well for reminding me of that, because I remember freaking out previously. I'm just like, wait, who's taking their turn next on stream? And yeah, just have to remember that it's green, dark blue, light blue, red, yellow, grey, then purple. So with the turn order correctly memorized, I observe as the enemy get gifted every kind of weapon you could possibly want, including special ops, because why not throw that in the mix? But yeah, it's going to be a constant just waiting to get that skip turn, waiting to drop their health ever so slowly. And it still is crazy to me rewatching this gameplay, because if the legend of Le Renard was not dropped by, I think it was only like 28 damage from that airstrike, but if that hadn't happened, then I would not have been within range to actually pull this out the bag and do this. Because if I cannot be visible as Ninja when someone is actually going to be able to take their turn. If someone takes their turn, I am dead. That is the outcome without the hide. If the hide's not there, you are screwed. If the pigs in place are not poisoned, then you are also screwed. There are a lot of ways that you can be screwed through this stipulation, but I would highly recommend giving it a go for yourself, because it does open your eyes, I guess, at the RNG that is involved, because I'm sure that if you were to play through all of this with this stipulation of just using a team of scouts, you would get a completely different outcome to how I'm doing this here. You could have pickpocketed, 2 self-heals, you could have pickpocketed a shockwave, which in that case you've basically just won the game completely. But here I'm just double checking that I am going to get the skip turn from the German. He is down to 5. So he skips. Le Renard is now a single hit away from death, and I am so close to victory. It has been entirely worth it, minus the thousands of hides that were involved. Again, would highly recommend you giving this a turn for yourself, because it opens your eyes as to the limitations, I guess, of the class, but also just as a challenge within itself. It is really fun to do, and as I mentioned before, I will be doing many more versus videos in future, usually involving the legends, but we will get the aces involved as well. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to wrap it up for this Scout versus Legend gameplay. I hope you guys enjoyed and maybe learned something along the way. Do you still use this poison strategy? Because I certainly do. Let me know your thoughts on everything in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys later for the next one.